The school bus pulled up to a busy stop where a 10-year-old black girl named Kira stood waiting. Her neatly braided hair was adorned with bright ribbons, and her backpack was decorated with patches of her favorite cartoon characters. Patiently, she waited her turn to board the bus, her small frame shivering slightly in the morning chill. She was still adjusting to her new class and hadn't yet made any friends. As her turn came to step onto the bus, the white driver, a middle-aged man with a stocky build, gave her a long, scrutinizing look. His expression was hard to read, but there was a trace of dissatisfaction in his furrowed brow. "Come on, move faster," he barked, waving her in without much enthusiasm. Kira, always polite, gave a small nod and walked toward the first empty seat she could find near the entrance. She liked sitting close to the door. It made her feel more at ease. But as soon as she placed her backpack on the seat, the driver's gruff voice echoed through the bus. "You, not here. Move to the back." Kira froze, unsure of what she'd done wrong. Her hands clutched the straps of her backpack tightly. "But," she began, her voice trembling. "No but." The driver cut her off, raising his voice. "I said move to the back. Don't make me repeat myself." The other children in the bus fell silent, watching the scene unfold. Some whispered to each other, their faces reflecting confusion and unease. With her head lowered, Kira quietly obeyed, walking to the rear of the bus. Her eyes brimmed with tears, but she bit her lip, determined not to let them fall. The bus rumbled back into motion, but Kira couldn't shake the weight of humiliation pressing down on her. She stared out the window, trying to distract herself, but her thoughts raced. What had she done wrong? Wasn't this supposed to be her seat too? At school, they always taught her that everyone was equal, that kindness mattered. Yet those words now felt distant and meaningless. Several stops later, the bus screeched to a halt again. The driver glanced in the rearview mirror, his eyes locking on Kira. "You, get off," he barked. "Wait for the next bus. This one's too full." Too full? Kira looked around. There were still empty seats throughout the bus. Confused and scared, she turned back to him, hoping he'd realize his mistake. But his glare told her otherwise. He wasn't going to explain himself or reconsider. "Off, now," he repeated firmly. "I don't have all day." With trembling hands, Kira grabbed her backpack and slowly made her way to the door. Her heart pounded, and her eyes stung with tears she could no longer hold back. She stepped off the bus and stood alone on the sidewalk, clutching her backpack tightly as the doors hissed shut behind her. The bus pulled away, leaving Kira standing on the edge of a busy road. Cars rushed past, splashing puddles as they went, and cold wind bit at her cheeks. She felt small and vulnerable, abandoned in a place that suddenly seemed so unkind. Taking a deep breath, she pulled out her phone. Her hands were shaking as she dialed her mom's number. "Mom," she whispered when the call connected, her voice cracking. "The driver made me get off the bus." There was a pause on the other end of the line, followed by the calm but firm voice of her mother, Evelyn. "Are you safe, sweetheart? Tell me where you are." Kira quickly described her location, and Evelyn's tone grew resolute. "Stay right there. I'm coming to get you. And listen to me carefully. This is not your fault. You hear me? You've done nothing wrong. I'll be there soon." Kira nodded, though Evelyn couldn't see her, and hung up. She sat down on a nearby bench, hugging her backpack tightly to her chest. Her mother's words brought a small measure of comfort, but the pain of the moment still lingered. Why had this happened? What had she done to deserve this? Kira, a black girl with big, expressive eyes, sat on a bench at the bus stop, gripping the straps of her backpack as if holding on to her last bit of courage. The cold wind whipped around her, biting at her cheeks and sending chills through her small frame. She curled her legs up on the bench, trying to make herself as small as possible, wishing she could disappear. She couldn't stop replaying the driver's words in her head. "Move to the back. Get off the bus." They echoed like a haunting melody, one that made her stomach tighten and her chest ache. What had she done to deserve this? She was polite, quiet, and followed the rules. At least, that's what she thought. But for some reason, the driver didn't see her the same way he saw the other kids. She wiped her tears away with the sleeve of her coat, though her face still felt warm and damp. Looking at the busy street in front of her, she felt so small, like the world had swallowed her up and left her behind. Meanwhile, the white bus driver continued his route as though nothing out of the ordinary had happened. He checked his rear-view mirror, making sure the kids in the bus were sitting quietly. A few of them whispered to each other, their glances darting toward the back of the bus. One boy, sitting near the front, finally mustered the courage to speak up. "Why did you make her get off?" the boy asked, his voice small but steady. "She didn't do anything wrong." The driver shot him a sharp look through the mirror, his jaw tightening. "You better mind your own business," he barked. "I don't need to explain myself to you. Now sit down and stay quiet." The boy shrank back into his seat, casting one last glance toward the empty spot Kira had occupied. The whispers stopped, and an uneasy silence fell over the bus. The driver smirked, satisfied that he had regained control. Back at the bench, Kira's phone vibrated in her trembling hands. She looked down and saw her mom's name on the screen. Picking up the call, she heard her mother's calm, strong voice. "I'm almost there, sweetheart. Are you okay?" Evelyn's words wrapped around Kira like a warm blanket. "I'm okay," Kira said softly, though her voice cracked. "I just don't understand, Mom. I didn't do anything." Evelyn paused, then spoke with quiet determination. "You listen to me, Kira. You've done nothing wrong. Nothing. Some people act in ways that don't make sense, but that's their problem, not yours. I'm on my way, and I promise I'm going to take care of this." Kira nodded, even though her mother couldn't see her. Just hearing her mom's voice made her feel a little stronger. She looked up as a black car pulled up to the curb. It was Evelyn, a tall, poised black woman whose presence radiated authority. She stepped out of the car in a tailored suit, her heels clicking on the pavement as she walked toward Kira. Evelyn crouched down in front of her daughter and pulled her into a tight hug. "Are you okay, baby?" she asked softly, stroking Kira's braids. Kira buried her face in her mom's shoulder, tears welling up again as she whispered, "He didn't want me on the bus. He made me leave." Evelyn's jaw tightened, but her voice remained calm. "I know, sweetheart, and that wasn't right. But I'm here now, and I promise you, we're going to make this right." Evelyn helped Kira into the car, carefully buckling her seatbelt before closing the door. She stood still for a moment, her hand resting on the car as she took a deep breath. Her daughter's tear-streaked face flashed in her mind, fueling the fire that now burned in her chest. She got back in the car and dialed the number for the local transportation office. Her voice was calm but firm when someone answered. "This is Evelyn Harper. I need to speak to your manager immediately." At the bus depot, the driver returned after completing his route. He parked the bus and stepped out, stretching his back as if it had been just another day at work. But his nonchalance evaporated when he saw Evelyn waiting for him in the parking lot, her arms crossed and her gaze unwavering. "Excuse me," she said, her tone as sharp as a blade. "Are you the driver of bus number 24? The driver blinked in confusion, trying to size her up. "Yeah, that's me. Who's asking?" "I am," Evelyn said, stepping closer. "I'm the mother of the little girl you kicked off your bus today." The driver stiffened, his posture shifting uneasily. "Look, I don't know what this is about, but I was just doing my job." "Doing your job?" Evelyn's voice grew colder. "Your job is to safely transport children, not to abandon them on the side of the road because of your personal biases. Do you have any idea what you've done?" The driver opened his mouth to respond, but before he could say anything, Evelyn continued, "You don't, but you will." Her words hung in the air like a thundercloud, and the driver felt a chill run down his spine. The driver stood frozen in front of Evelyn, his usual confidence replaced by unease. The tall black woman before him radiated a commanding presence. Her piercing gaze left no room for excuses or evasion. He had dealt with complaints before, but this was different. The fire in her eyes told him she wasn't someone to be dismissed. "I was just following the rules," he muttered, attempting to regain control. The girl was sitting in the wrong place, and I have to maintain order on the bus. Evelyn took a step closer, her heels clicking sharply on the asphalt. Order? She repeated, her voice calm but edged with steel. You left a 10-year-old girl alone on the side of the road. Don't talk to me about order. Explain to me how that's part of your job description. The driver shifted uncomfortably, avoiding her eyes. Look, I didn't mean anything by it. I thought... No, you didn't think, Evelyn interrupted, her tone rising slightly. You didn't think about her safety. You didn't think about her dignity. You didn't think at all. She turned sharply to the depot manager, who had just approached the scene, looking flustered. He was a middle-aged man in a crisp shirt and tie, his face tight with concern. Ma'am, I'm George Anderson, the manager here. I understand there's been a misunderstanding, he began, trying to sound conciliatory. Evelyn cut him off. Misunderstanding? My daughter, a child, was humiliated and abandoned by your employee. That's not a misunderstanding. It's negligence. George glanced at the driver, who now looked thoroughly uncomfortable. I assure you, we take these matters seriously. Perhaps we could sit down and discuss this. Discuss this? Evelyn folded her arms. There's nothing to discuss until you understand the gravity of what happened. Your driver didn't just fail in his duties. He put my daughter at risk and treated her like she didn't belong on his bus. George nodded nervously. Of course, we'll conduct a full investigation. No, Evelyn interrupted again, her voice sharp. You'll do more than that. First, I want this driver suspended while you investigate. Second, I want to see the policies your company has in place to ensure this never happens again. And third, I want mandatory training for all your staff on how to treat passengers with respect and fairness. The driver finally spoke up, his voice defensive. Look, I didn't mean any harm. I was just trying to keep things running smoothly. She was... Don't, Evelyn snapped, her eyes narrowing. Don't try to justify what you did. You singled her out, humiliated her, and put her in danger. Do you even understand what that feels like for a child? Or are you too busy hiding behind excuses? The driver looked down, his face flushed. He mumbled something under his breath, but Evelyn didn't let him finish. This isn't just about my daughter, she continued, now addressing both the driver and the manager. It's about every child who rides your buses, trusting that they'll be treated with care and respect. If you can't ensure that, you shouldn't be in this business. George, now visibly sweating, held up his hands. We hear you, Ms. Harper. I'll personally see to it that this situation is handled properly. We deeply apologize for what happened to your daughter. Evelyn's expression didn't soften. Apologies are a start, but I'm not leaving this in your hands without accountability. I'm Evelyn Harper, the State Attorney General. I'll be monitoring this process closely to ensure real changes are made. At her words, the driver's eyes widened. The manager blinked, caught off guard. Evelyn didn't wait for their responses. She turned on her heel and walked back toward her car, leaving the two men in stunned silence. In the car, Kira sat quietly, her knees drawn to her chest. When Evelyn opened the door and slid into the driver's seat, Kira turned to her, her eyes glistening with unspoken questions. Is it over? Kira asked softly. Evelyn reached out and took her daughter's hand. Not yet, but it will be. I've made sure they understand what they did, and I'll make sure it doesn't happen again. Kira hesitated, then asked, Did I do something wrong? Evelyn's heart clenched. She turned to face her daughter fully, her voice firm and reassuring. No, baby. You did absolutely nothing wrong. Sometimes people do bad things because of their own ignorance or prejudice, but that's not on you. Do you hear me? Kira nodded slowly, her gaze dropping to her lap. Evelyn gave her hand a gentle squeeze. I'm proud of you, she said. You were brave, and you trusted me. That's all I could ever ask. Kira managed a small smile, feeling the warmth of her mother's unwavering support. The incident didn't end there. Evelyn's actions sparked an internal investigation at the bus company, leading to the suspension of the driver and a company-wide training program on passenger treatment. The story gained attention, with many praising Evelyn for standing up for her daughter and demanding accountability. Through it all, Evelyn remained focused not on revenge, but on justice. Not just for Kira, but for every child who might have faced similar treatment. In the days that followed, Evelyn's actions sent ripples far beyond the bus depot. The story of how a black mother, who happened to be the state's attorney general, stood up against the mistreatment of her daughter spread quickly. Local news outlets picked up the story, and soon it became a topic of broader conversation. The bus company issued a formal apology to Evelyn and Kira, stating their commitment to ensuring such incidents would not happen again. The driver was suspended pending a thorough investigation, and Evelyn's insistence on staff-wide training was implemented immediately. A new policy was introduced to ensure all drivers underwent mandatory training on professionalism, inclusivity, and passenger safety. At home, Kira was slowly starting to feel like herself again. She spent her evenings curled up on the couch with her favorite books, her mother occasionally checking on her with a gentle smile. But the memory of that day still lingered like a shadow. One evening, as they sat together in the kitchen, Kira hesitated before speaking. "Mom," she began softly, tracing circles on the table with her finger. "Do you think he hated me?" Evelyn paused, setting down the cup of tea she had been holding. She leaned forward, her hands resting on Kira's. "Sweetheart," she said, her voice warm but serious, "sometimes people treat others unfairly because of their own ignorance or fear. It's not about you, it's about them. What happened to you was wrong, and it was never your fault." Kira nodded but didn't look up. "But it felt like I didn't belong there." Evelyn's heart ached, but she steadied herself, determined to give her daughter the strength she needed. "Kira, listen to me," she said firmly. "You belong wherever you want to be. No one has the right to make you feel small or unworthy, and when they try, you speak up, just like you did when you called me." Kira glanced up, her eyes searching her mother's. "But I was scared." Evelyn smiled, reaching over to tuck a stray braid behind Kira's ear. "Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you face your fear and do the right thing anyway. And that's exactly what you did. I'm proud of you." Kira managed a small smile, a flicker of confidence returning to her expression. "I'm proud of you too, Mom." Meanwhile, the driver was forced to confront the consequences of his actions. During the company-mandated training, he sat silently as the trainer explained the importance of respect and empathy toward passengers, especially children. The other drivers listened attentively, but he avoided eye contact, his mind replaying the moment he saw Evelyn's resolute face. The company, under Evelyn's watchful eye, implemented stricter protocols for handling passenger disputes and introduced a hotline for parents and students to report incidents. The changes, though small, sent a clear message. Such behavior would not be tolerated. Weeks later, Kira and Evelyn walked hand in hand to the bus stop. It was the first time Kira had ridden the bus since the incident. She hesitated for a moment as the bus approached, but Evelyn squeezed her hand gently. "You've got this," Evelyn whispered. As the doors opened, the new driver, a kind-looking older woman, smiled warmly at Kira. "Good morning, hop on in." Kira glanced at her mom, who gave her an encouraging nod. Taking a deep breath, Kira stepped onto the bus and chose a seat near the front, where she felt most comfortable. As the bus pulled away, Evelyn stood on the curb, watching her daughter with a mix of pride and relief. That evening, as Evelyn tucked Kira into bed, her daughter looked up at her. "Mom, do you think the world will ever be fair?" Evelyn sat on the edge of the bed, her fingers lightly brushing Kira's braids. "I think the world gets fairer when people like you and me stand up for what's right. It's not easy, and it's not quick. But every time we speak out, we make it a little better." Kira nodded thoughtfully, her small hand reaching out to hold her mother's. "Then I'll keep trying," she said softly. Evelyn smiled, leaning down to kiss her daughter's forehead. "That's my girl." The story didn't just end with a personal victory for Evelyn and Kira. It became a symbol of standing up against injustice and the power of a mother's love and determination. Evelyn's actions reminded the community of the importance of speaking out, and Kira's bravery inspired others to believe that even the smallest voices could make a difference. Together, they proved that fairness and justice aren't just ideals, they're achievable one step at a time.